The wind howled across the red desert, carrying sand that bit into the skin like tiny knives. She was alone, chained to a tall metal pole in the middle of nowhere. Her wrists were bruised, her ankles bleeding, her head leaning forward in silence. The alien girl, whose name was Syria, had stopped counting the hours since she was left behind. Her silver hair was matted with blood and dirt. Her pale skin burned under the twin suns. Her lips were cracked. And every breath she took felt heavier than the last. She didn't scream anymore. There was no point. No one would hear her. Her team had flown away days ago, the ship lifting into the sky without a second glance. They had called her weak, said. She was slowing them down. She had begged them, told them she would fight. She would run, she would survive, but they didn't care. They left her with only one thing: chains, cold, cruel chains that held her to this forgotten place. At night, she heard the sounds of creatures moving nearby. Their eyes glowed in the dark, watching her, waiting. She didn't know what they were, but she knew they were getting braver. Soon, one of them would come close enough, and she wouldn't be able to stop it. Her vision was fading, her stomach empty, her body too tired to fight. Syria looked up at the sky one last time, wondering if death would be quiet. But then, her eyes caught something, a shape, small but moving. It wasn't a beast, it was walking. On two legs, a living being, coming toward her through the heat and dust. She blinked, unsure if it was real or just a dream. The figure got closer, a man tall, wearing dusty gear. Human by the looks of him. Humans were rare out here, and not trusted by her kind. She had been told they were wild, selfish, and dangerous. But this one didn't carry a weapon. He didn't shout. He walked slowly, calmly. His eyes locked on hers with no fear. Syria tried to lift her head, her lips parting slightly, but no sound came out. He stood in front of her, stared at the chains, then looked into her face. "Are you alive?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern. She blinked once, and that was enough. He dropped his bag and pulled out a strange tool. He started working on the locks, his hands quick but careful. The metal sparked as he twisted the tool, the chains clicking one by one. "You're not going to last much longer in this heat," he said, not expecting a reply. He slipped a canteen from his belt and held it to her lips. The water was warm, but felt like a miracle as it touched her tongue. Syria coughed, then took more, her eyes filling with tears she didn't expect. Why was he helping her? He didn't even know who she was. The last shackle fell, and she slumped forward. He caught her just in time, holding her gently in his arms. "I got you," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you here." Her body shook from weakness, but for the first time, her heart felt something strange: hope. He lifted her with effort, carried her to a small hovercart nearby. It had a tarp and supplies. Nothing fancy, but it was safe. He laid her down, covered her with a blanket, and fed her tiny pieces of dried food. She couldn't speak yet, but she watched him, her eyes full of questions. Who was he? Why was he here? Why did he care? But her tired mind couldn't hold those thoughts for long. That night, the stars appeared, cold and distant above the desert. The man, his name was Eli, sat beside her, adding more wood to the fire. Syria's fingers twitched, and her eyes opened slightly. She saw him sitting there, not sleeping, still watching over her. "Why?" she whispered, her voice like a breeze. "Why did you save me?" Eli looked at her and smiled gently. "Because you were alone," he said, "and no one should die alone." Her eyes closed again, but this time not from fear out in the desert. Something else was watching them from far away, not a beast, not a friend, something worse. But for now, Syria slept no longer alone, and the wind carried her soft breath across the dust. Eli didn't ask her who she was, or what she had done to be chained like that. He only focused on getting her warm and safe. The small fire burned low beside them, casting shadows across the broken land. Syria lay on the blanket, her body still weak, but her eyes now watched every move the human made. He moved with care, not like someone rushing to leave. But like someone who had already decided to stay, she had expected questions, demands maybe, even fear, but he gave her none of those. Instead, he offered silence, food, water, and a steady hand. Syria couldn't understand it, not yet. In her world, kindness always came with a price. When the twin suns rose the next day, Eli handed her a small tool. It was round, simple, but useful. "You hold it," he said with a calm voice. "Just in case something comes close." She took it, her fingers shaking, not from fear, but from confusion. Why did this human trust her with a weapon, even a small one? He didn't know her, didn't know what she was capable of. She had been trained in combat. Her people were warriors, proud and sharp. But this moment, this quiet between them, felt like a crack in all she knew. Eli packed his things slowly, checking her wounds, replacing the bandages with steady hands. His touch was careful, never harsh, never rushed. When he looked at her, he didn't see an alien or a threat. He saw someone who had been left behind. And that was enough for him. By evening, Syria sat up on her own, her back still sore, her legs stiff. She watched the sun set behind the jagged rocks, a colorless sky turning silver and black. Eli handed her a metal cup with warm broth. She sipped it slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Finally, she asked in a weak voice, "You are not afraid of me?" Eli chuckled gently, tossing another log onto the fire. "I've seen monsters," he said. "You're not one of them." His answer made her chest feel strange, tight in a way she couldn't explain. She looked down at her hands, still bruised, still shaking. She had been a warrior once, but now she didn't feel like one. She had been abandoned, discarded like broken armor, and yet this human looked at her like she still mattered. At night, strange creatures circled their camp, their glowing eyes flashing between the trees. Syria reached for the tool Eli had given her, ready to defend them, but he stood first, calm and quiet, holding up a flare that lit the dark in bright red light. The creatures hissed and scattered. Disappearing into the rocks, Eli sat down beside her again, unbothered, as if danger was normal. "Out here, you learn how to scare things off without firing a shot," he said. She nodded slowly, impressed despite herself. This human knew survival in a way she had never learned. For the next 2 days, he helped her walk again, just a few steps at a time. She leaned on him without shame, because he never made her feel weak. He shared his food, gave her the last of his clean water. And when he found a wild flower growing through the cracks in the sand, he picked it and handed it to her. She stared at it for a long time, the small petals trembling in the wind. No one had ever given her something so useless, yet so beautiful. She didn't smile, not yet. But something inside her started to shift. Something soft, something alive. That night, she spoke again, her voice clearer than before. "My people left me," she said, staring into the fire. "I know," Eli replied, without surprise. "They said I was slowing them down," she whispered, "so they left me chained alone." Eli didn't say anything for a while. He just sat beside her, warming his hands near the flames. Then he said, "That's not weakness, you know, it's cruelty." And his words felt like a blanket wrapping around her broken spirit. The silence between them grew peaceful, not empty. The stars above blinked in and out. The night cold but calm. Syria looked at Eli, and for the first time saw more than just a human. She saw someone she could trust, maybe even follow, but deep inside her mind, a memory stirred, a weapon, buried far beneath the sands, one her people had come to find. They had left her because she refused to activate it. And now, it might still be there, waiting for someone else to find it. She turned her head and watched Eli sharpen a small blade. He was still calm, still unaware of what lay beneath the surface of this world. And in that moment, Syria knew she had to tell him soon, because saving her was just the beginning. Syria stood on shaking legs as the morning sun rose, painting the rocks gold. The sand felt strange under her bare feet, soft but ready to burn. She had walked before, trained in war and speed, but now each step felt like a new beginning. Eli walked beside her without saying much, only offering his hand when she stumbled. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of questions that hadn't been asked yet. They reached the edge of a canyon, deep and wide, with sharp cliffs and dark caves far below. Eli scanned the path ahead while Syria leaned against a rock, breathing slow. He didn't ask if she was okay. He already knew she was pushing herself too hard. She hated how weak she felt, hated how much she needed help. But every time she looked at Eli, she didn't see judgment, only patience. She had never met anyone like him. Not among her people, not among enemies, this human. He was something different. That night, as they set up camp near a cracked old structure that once held machines, Syria sat close to the fire. She watched Eli clean a small tool, humming softly to himself. She turned toward him and said quietly, "Your people, do they all help strangers like this?" Eli smiled without looking up. "No," he said, "but I'm not my people." His answer made her chest feel tight again, like something heavy was trying to float. She looked down at her hands, still bruised from the chain, still scarred from betrayal. Then she said it, what she had been holding back since he freed her. "My team was not just passing through," she whispered. "They came for something buried." Eli stopped humming, his eyes lifting slowly to meet hers. "They were sent to find a weapon," she continued, her voice bitter. "Ancient, lost. Something that could control the minds of thousands. I told them it was too dangerous, but they didn't care." Her words hung in the air like smoke, rising into the dark. Eli leaned back, resting on his elbows, silent for a while. "Is it still there?" he asked at last. "Yes," she said. "Beneath the dust, inside the old city. No one else knows how to activate it." She expected him to step away, to look at her with fear or anger, but Eli only nodded once, as if he had heard such things before. So he said, "We go there and destroy it." She blinked, stunned. By the way he said, "we," like he had already decided they were one team. "You would help me again?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "I already did," Eli answered. "Why stop now?" For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened, and she looked away so he wouldn't see the shimmer in her eyes. They started moving. Early the next day, walking toward the dead city on the map Syria drew in the dirt. The air grew colder as they moved closer to the ruins. The ground darker, the sky clouded. No birds flew overhead, no beasts wandered nearby. It was as if the land itself was afraid of what slept beneath. They reached the first broken wall by sunset, tall stones leaning against each other like tired giants. The city had no name, no flags, only silence and time. Syria moved carefully, her steps lighter now, her energy returning. Eli followed close, scanning every shadow with alert eyes. She stopped near a giant stone door, covered in faded marks only she could read. "These are warnings," she said quietly, brushing off the dust. The weapon was hidden by those who feared it, not those who built it. Eli ran his fingers along the cold stone, feeling the deep grooves. "Think your team is still looking for it?" he asked. Syria didn't answer right away. Then she said, "If they think it still works, they'll come back for it." Eli's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the empty air. Footsteps. Not theirs, not wild beasts, but boots on stone. Syria's head snapped toward the noise, her eyes narrowing. "They're already here," she whispered. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a collapsed wall. They crouched in silence as shadows moved along the ruins. Voices spoke in her language, sharp and angry. Her old team had returned, and they were not alone. Syria's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from anger. She saw the one who left her behind, Terran, the leader, the one who gave the order. He walked tall and proud, a scanner in his hand, eyes searching the ruins like a predator. If he found the chamber, if he activated the device, it would all begin again. She turned to Eli, her breath sharp. "We have to stop them," she said. He nodded once, his voice steady. Then we better move fast. In the dead city where no birds sang and no wind blew, the race had begun, and only one pair had the heart to stop what was coming. A strange pulse moved through the ground, slow and deep like a heartbeat under stone. Syria stopped mid-step, her hand touching the ancient wall beside her. Eli noticed her go still, his hand moving to the blade at his hip, but she didn't speak. She just stared down at the earth as if it had whispered something to her. "This place is waking up," she said softly. Eli looked around. The silence now too heavy, too thick, he felt it to not sound. But pressure, as if the air was holding its breath. They moved quickly through the ruins, past fallen towers and broken doors covered in old symbols. Syria walked with new focus, not because she was strong, but because she had no choice. They had to find the chamber before Terran did. If he reached the control core, the weapon would respond to him or worse. It might respond to Syria if she got too close. She had touched it once before, long ago. And it had whispered to her in a voice colder than space. "I remember the path," she said, turning down a narrow tunnel. Eli followed her without question, stepping carefully over shattered tiles. The walls around them were made of black stone, smooth and quiet, no dust, no cobwebs. As if time had not dared enter this place, they reached a sealed door. Half sunken in the ground, shaped like a giant eye, Syria touched the center, and it glowed faintly. "I don't want to open it," she whispered, "but we must." Eli put his hand over hers, and the glow grew stronger. The door opened with a slow hiss, revealing a round room lit by blue fire trapped in glass. At the center stood the Cora machine that looked like it was made of bone and crystal. Syria stepped inside, her breath catching, her mind flashing with memories not her own. The device spoke to her without words, pouring images into her head, cities burning, people kneeling, minds bending like dry branches. Eli saw her freeze, her hands shaking, and he moved fast, pulling her back. "Stay with me," he said firmly. "Don't let it pull you in." She blinked, her breath returning. "I thought I was strong enough to resist," she said, voice trembling. "But it still remembers me." They heard footsteps again, this time closer, faster. Terran's voice echoed down the hallway, full of hunger and power. "He's almost here," Eli said, gripping the handle of his blade. Syria looked at the core, then at him, torn between fear and duty. "If I touch it again, I might be able to shut it down," she said. "But it might also change me." Eli shook his head. "No," he said, "we find another way." But time was running out. Terran and his team had already entered the outer chamber, weapons ready, voices rising. Syria stepped toward the device, her eyes locked on it. It hummed louder now, as if calling her name. Eli blocked her path, holding up a strange device of his own, a small explosive charge. "We destroy it," he said, "end it for good. But if it resists, the blast might not be enough." Syria warned. Eli nodded slowly. "Then I buy us time, and you finish the job." Before she could argue, he ran to the door and kicked over a pile of loose stones. The noise echoed loud, and the hunters outside turned toward it. Shots fired, sparks flew. Eli ducked behind cover, shouting, "Now, Syria, now!" Her hands trembled as she reached for the core, her fingers brushing against the cold, living crystal. Pain shot through her body like lightning. But she didn't pull back. She focused on Eli's voice in the distance, not the whispers in her head. The core fought her, pushing memories of destruction into her mind. It showed her what it wanted: control, silence, obedience. But she pushed back with everything she had. She thought of chains, of blood, of betrayal, of a human who refused to leave her behind. A sudden crack echoed through the room as the crystal lines in the device split. It screamed not with sound, but with light, blinding and sharp. Eli saw the flash and called out, "Syria!" But she was already falling, collapsing beside the broken core as the room shook. Terran entered just as the device shattered. He saw Syria on the floor and shouted in rage, "What have you done?" Eli fired once, the shot hitting the wall. Forcing Terran to dive for cover, he grabbed Syria and pulled her close, her skin burning hot to the touch. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice shaking. She opened her eyes. "Weak but alive, I destroyed it," she said. "I stopped it." And Eli held her tight as the ruins began to collapse around them. They ran together, the path behind them falling into dust. Smoke filled the halls, the lights fading, the weapon gone forever. But something inside Syria had changed, and neither of them knew what price would come next. The sky cracked open with thunder as they climbed out of the ruins. Black clouds had rolled in fast, swirling above the ancient city like smoke from a dying fire. Syria stumbled onto the surface, covered in dust and sweat, her legs barely holding her weight. Eli wrapped an arm around her waist, helping her move as the first drops of acid rain began to fall. Neither of them spoke, not yet. They were still alive. But the cost of survival hung heavy in the air. Behind them, the ruins groaned and sank deeper into the earth, like the planet itself wanted to bury the past. The weapon was gone. But Syria felt something strange inside her chest, something left behind. They reached the shelter Eli had built days ago, hidden beneath rocks and tarp. Once inside, Syria collapsed on the floor. Breathing hard, Eli knelt beside her, checked her pulse, wiped blood from her temple with the edge of his sleeve. "You're okay," he said. Though he didn't fully believe it, Syria's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dark. "I heard it," she whispered, her voice low and shaky. "It called me by name, even as it died." Eli didn't like the sound of that. He had seen many things out here, storms, beasts, even machines that could rewrite memory. But he had never seen a person survive a direct link with ancient tech and come out speaking clearly. He handed her a drink, but her hands trembled too much to hold the cup. He steadied it for her, helping her sip slowly as the wind screamed. Outside, for hours she drifted in and out of sleep, trapped in dreams where she floated through black halls. The voices of her old team echoed in her ears, but so did new voices, strange, distant, and cold. When she finally sat up, the rain had stopped, and Eli was sharpening his blade near the entrance. He turned when he heard her move, relief softening his face. "You've been out for a full day," he said. "Thought I might have to carry you again." She gave a weak smile, the first in what felt like years, but it faded fast, replaced by the shadow of what she remembered. "Terran," she said. "He got away," Eli nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "I saw him run when the ruins started falling," he said. "Coward left his men behind." Syria stared at the fire, her fingers curling around her knees. "He'll come back," she said. "He won't stop." Eli stood up, placed another piece of metal into the fire to bend it into shape. "Let him," he said. "We'll be ready." But Syria shook her head. "He doesn't want the weapon anymore," she whispered. "He wants revenge." Outside, something moved in the shadows, a flicker, quick and silent. Eli turned fast, weapon drawn, his eyes scanning the dark. Syria stood slowly, her muscles stiff but her mind sharp. She felt it too, someone watching, someone waiting. They stepped outside together, backs straight, weapons ready. The air smelled of burnt stone and wet dust. Then a voice called out from the rocks, deep and smooth. "You made a mistake destroying that device, girl." Terran stepped into view, not alone this time. Behind him were two new soldiers, armed with black rifles and no faces, helmets glowing red. Syria felt her heart race, but she didn't step back. Eli moved in front of her, blade drawn, stance steady. "You left her to die," Eli said coldly. "And now you come crawling back for what?" Terran's smile was thin and cruel. "I came to collect what belongs to me," he said, "and punish the human who got in the way." Syria stepped forward, eyes burning with something more than fear. "I don't belong to you," she said, voice clear. "You're nothing but a shadow of a coward." Terran laughed. but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then let's see if you've got the strength to prove it." He raised his hand, and the two soldiers opened fire. Eli tackled Syria behind a boulder, laser blasts cutting through the air. They rolled, scrambled, returned fire. One soldier dropped with a clean shot to the neck. The other moved fast, too fast, enhanced by tech neither of them had seen before. Syria grabbed the blade from Ally's pack and charged, her feet steady despite the pain. She dodged the rifle swing, slid under the enemy, and struck deep into its core. The machine hissed and sparked, collapsing in a heap. Terran backed away slowly, his smile gone. "You'll regret this," he said, stepping into a cloaking field and vanishing. Syria stood still, breathing hard, her hands stained red with oil and blood. Ayla looked at her, silent for a moment, then nodded. "You're not chained anymore," he said, and for the first time Syria believed it. Start with part 6 more unique. ChatGPT said. The air was thick with smoke and ash as the horizon burned bright. Syria's breath came fast, sharp, her body trembling but refusing to fall. She gripped Eli's arm tightly, feeling the strength in his steady hand. Behind them, the ruins of the ancient city were collapsing, dust swirling like ghosts in the mud. "Dying light," Terran's voice echoed from the distance, full of rage and broken promises. "You think you've won?" he shouted, his footsteps pounding closer, but Syria did not answer, her eyes fixed on the jagged shadow moving through the smoke. She knew this fight was far from over. Ali pulled out a small device, cold metal glowing softly in his palm. "We have one chance," he said, voice low but firm. "To stop this now." Syria nodded, swallowing the fear that threatened to choke her. Together, they moved toward the narrow canyon where the final battle waited. The ground shook beneath their feet, rocks falling like thunder. Terran appeared suddenly, weapon raised, a cruel smile twisting his lips. Syria stepped forward, every scar, every pain fueling her will. "You left me chained to die," she said, voice steady as steel. "Now you face what you made." Shots rang out, sharp and loud, cutting through the charged air. Eli deflected a blast with his blade, sparks flying. From the strike, Syria charged, blade flashing, her movements sharp and sure despite her wounds. She was no longer the girl left behind. She was a storm, wild and unstoppable. Terran staggered, his weapon falling. Eyes wide with shock, Eli moved quickly, binding Terran's hands with reinforced chains. The ruins around them crumbled, dust settling like a silent witness. Syria stood tall, breathing hard, her heart pounding with fierce victory. But as silence fell, a new sound rose, a low hum from beneath the earth. The weapon's core, damaged, but alive, pulsing with a dark hunger. Syria looked at Eli, understanding passing between them without words. This was only the beginning, and the real fight had just begun. The stars were bright above, cold and clear like distant eyes watching over them. Syria sat quietly beside Eli, her hands resting on the soft dirt. The war was over, or at least, that's what they hoped. But in her chest, a new feeling grew, something like peace, but also something stronger. She looked at Eli, who smiled softly, tired but alive. He had never left her side, through every danger and every shadow. Syria thought of the chains that once held her, cold and cruel against her skin. Now they were gone, and she was free, truly free. Her people never came back for her, never sent a ship or a word. She had been abandoned once, but she had found something new, a home. Eli reached out, taking her hand gently. "Where will you go now?" he asked quietly. Syria squeezed his hand and smiled, a small, real smile. "Anywhere," she said. "But with you." Together they stood, looking out at the rising suns. The future was unknown, but it was theirs to face, no longer a prisoner of chains or fear. Syria breathed in the fresh air, feeling hope like a fire inside her. The alien girl who was left behind had found her place. Not in the stars or in weapons, but in the heart of a human who believed in her. And as they walked forward, side by side, the universe seemed to hold its breath, watching the story of two souls who had chosen freedom, not because it was easy, but because they dared to fight for it.